You know why some people always seem to have extra money? It's not because they're doing anything exciting. It's because they've stuck with a bunch of boring habits long enough for them to actually work. I'm Joy of Frugal Creative Living, and today we're talking about some habits that may not be exciting, but they get the job done. And these are the kinds of habits that when you stick with them, they keep more money in your pocket without you having to constantly think about it. One of the simplest ways to save money is just staying in more often and cutting down on how much you're driving. And I know a lot of people don't want gas prices to dictate their lifestyle. I get that. But the reality is every time you go out, you're spending money just to get there. And when gas is hovering around $4.50 a gallon in a lot of places, those quick little trips start adding up fast. And what you don't want is for the cost of getting somewhere to end up being exponentially more than the actual activity itself. So instead of always going out for entertainment, I try to find things I enjoy doing at home. So for me, that's crafting and repurposing. And that's actually where my whole motto comes from: spend less, create more. I just genuinely like making things. I can sit down and color, I can draw, I can use my Cricut, I can just do something creative. And sometimes I'll make fun snacks for myself or watch a movie. My family, we like playing games together. And honestly, sometimes I just use the time at home to get things done around the house. And there's always something that needs attention. The point is, I've learned how to enjoy being at home instead of feeling like I always need to go out to have a good time. And when I do need to go out, I try to batch my errands. So if I can think a couple of days ahead and group everything into one trip, I'm not constantly going in and coming back, going out and using up my gas unnecessarily. Another habit that doesn't sound exciting but makes a real difference is eating healthier, just especially cutting back on sugar and overly processed foods. And this goes beyond just saving money on the groceries. What you eat actually affects how you think and how you feel and how you function day to day. And I really saw this for myself recently. As many of you know, I turned 50 last year and I started dealing with some hormonal changes, and I noticed I was craving sweets a lot more than usual. I was eating a lot of chocolate and candy and cookies and just all of it. And after a while, I started to feel so off. My mood was low. My energy was low. I was having a hard time focusing. I wasn't keeping up with my finances. I couldn't focus. I couldn't even focus long enough to make videos for this channel. I just felt so behind on everything. And so I was praying about it and started paying attention and started feeling like the issue might have been the food I was eating. And even though I had that thought, I didn't immediately change because I was enjoying my candy. But after a couple of weeks of feeling stuck, I finally decided to test it. This was on a Friday. I told myself I'm going to take a few days and not be eating all the junk food. I'm going to pull back on the sugar and see what happens. And by Monday, I felt like I was a completely different person. My mind was clear again. I had ideas flowing. I was able to sit down and get back on top of my finances. I even did my taxes all in one day. And that experience just really showed me how much what we eat can affect our ability to manage our lives, including our money. When your mood and focus are off, you're more likely to make spending decisions that don't make any sense. So something as simple as eating more whole foods, getting more fiber, and cutting back on sugar can actually support better financial habits and decisions. Another simple habit is taking food from home when you're out running errands or going on road trips. So every time we're heading out for a long trip, the first thing I like to do is make sandwiches. I grab a loaf of bread, some sliced cheese and lunch meat, and just put together sandwiches for everybody. And we'll bring a big bag of chips, drinks, and snacks. And sometimes I portion them out, sometimes I don't. I just grab the whole bag. And is it fancy? No, not at all, because everything's just wrapped up in foil. And I'll be honest, sometimes it feels a little bit cringe pulling out homemade food in the car when we're traveling, especially when we're traveling with other families. But the amount of money that it saves over stopping at fast food places every couple of hours is huge. And it's not impressive looking, but it makes a huge difference in our spending. Wearing the same clothes more often is another habit that saves money in more ways than people might realize. There was a time when I was so particular about not repeating my outfits too often. Like I even kept track in a little chart to make sure that I wasn't wearing the same thing within a 2-week period. But that meant that I needed more clothes. I was doing more laundry, using more detergent, and just spending more on utilities. It was so much effort. It was like all this extra effort for something that didn't even matter. At some point, I started paying attention to the people around me and realized that people were always repeating their outfits all the time. And I had never even noticed before that point. And that made me realize that when I'm repeating my clothes, nobody is paying attention to me either. So I shifted to more of a capsule style approach. I just wear the same staple pieces more often and then just change kind of how I put them together. And I focus on more classic, timeless pieces instead of the trendy stuff. And before I buy anything, I ask myself if it actually goes with something that I already own. And if it doesn't, or if it's too similar to something I already have, then I'm not buying it. And that habit alone cuts down on a lot of unnecessary spending and clutter. Another thing I've gotten into the habit of doing is always looking for a discount before I finish checking out when I'm shopping online. I don't just assume that the price I see is the final price. So for example, when I was doing my taxes recently, the fees came up at the end because I do self-employment tax, and I didn't want to pay the amount. It was just way beyond what I was expecting to have to pay. So before I checked out, I took a few moments to search for a discount. I checked in my email to see if maybe they had sent me a promo code, and I didn't see anything there, but then I just did a quick search online and I ended up finding a promotion on the tax service website that took $55 off of the total price just by taking that extra little step. It literally took me about a minute and a half, but it made a noticeable difference. So before I pay for anything, I always do just a quick check to see if there's a better price available. Cutting back to one streaming service at a time is another easy way to reduce spending. And I know we always talk about subscriptions, but it's because it's that kind of unnecessary entertainment there that's often taking money from us that we don't have to give. So it's a good place to start when you're trying to cut back, but you don't need access to everything all at once. So when money is tight, I'll pause maybe all but one subscription. And sometimes I won't even say anything to my family. I won't tell them that I'm canceling it. I'll just wait to see if anybody in the house even notices. And a lot of times they don't. And in one case, it took about 2 months before anybody even mentioned that the particular services were gone. And that told me everything I needed to know. If nobody notices, then it's probably not something that we need to be paying for. And between having one streaming service, watching YouTube, and then some free TV options, there is plenty enough to watch. Eating the same staple foods regularly is another habit that might sound boring, but it really does keep the grocery costs down. And I've come to think of certain foods as stretch foods. And those are things like rice, pasta, beans, whole chickens cut up for the parts. And rice especially is so incredibly useful because it's inexpensive, but it expands when it's cooked and it just goes with everything. And when I was growing up, there was a time where our family, like, we had no money and rice got us through. Even now, it's just still one of the most practical staples that you can keep on hand. You don't need a completely different, elaborate meal every day. And you can just use the same core ingredients and then just prepare them in different ways. It's similar to the wardrobe. You just kind of have these classic ingredients that you can assemble in different combinations. And that keeps things simple and it keeps your grocery budget under control. Planning ahead for outings instead of being spontaneous is another habit that helps you stay on budget. And I know there's this idea that you should be able to get up and go whenever you feel like it. And I can just take off on a moment's notice. A lot of times you can still do the things you want. You just have to plan for them. And that might mean saving up over time or working it into your budget in advance. And when people see you going on a trip or enjoying an outing, they don't know anything about all the planning that went into it. They just see the result. They see you living a fabulous life, doing the things you love doing. Delaying something doesn't make your life boring. It just means that you're being intentional about how you spend your money. Another thing that really helps is choosing free or low cost activities instead of always defaulting to paid entertainment. There are so many options out there and you just have to look for them because you have museums and cultural events, art exhibits, community fairs, and many of these are free or have a very low cost for entry. Some museums have free admission days during the week and others have pay what you want days. You could just do a quick search online and usually pull up free events happening in your area. And honestly, these can be just as enjoyable as more expensive outings. So I know in my household, my children go to a cyber school, but their school offers hundreds of field trip options every month and they're already paid for. We don't have to cover the cost. So I try to take full advantage of those opportunities, and we've gone to museums and educational events. They're getting out of the house, they're learning something new and genuinely having a good time. So sometimes saving money isn't about cutting out fun, it's just about being willing to enjoy what's free. And finally, one of the most important habits, even though it's probably the least exciting, is checking your finances regularly. And that just means looking at your bank account, tracking your expenses, and staying aware of what's happening with your money. And I'll be honest, it is not something I always feel like doing. I would much rather be doing something else most times, but it's necessary, especially when money is tight. You have to know what's coming in and what's going out. And you also need to be able to catch anything unusual like unexpected charges or potential fraud. And even if your bills are automated, like mine are automated, it's still important to check in. Every couple of weeks, I'll just look through and make sure everything went through like it was supposed to, that nothing unexpected popped up, and that the money that's supposed to be there is still there. Because at the end of the day, you can't fix what you don't see. So when you put all of these habits together, they might feel not exciting on their own, but they do add up. And saving money isn't usually about one huge change. It's about a lot of small, consistent decisions. And those boring habits are often the ones that make the biggest difference over time. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have not subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. And then you can share this video. I will see you next time. Bye.